Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hari Om. So looks like Sarika has not joined till now. What are we going to do? We'll get started. Okay. Okay, let's get started. Hari Om. We'll get started with our invocation prayers.
Sahana bhavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavati tamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. गीता ध्यानम। ओम पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीं अष्टादशाध्यायिनी अम्ब त्वामनुसन्धानामि भगवती भवद्वेषिणी। नमोस्तुते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय पूत्रवैद्यैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृततुल्ये नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतदा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवतीकृतेन वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम्। लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरः पीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमलप्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः.
So like an avatar, she prakat ho gayi pata nahi kahan se, Sarika. So I thought I'll play a small prank. You know, if Shri Krishna can play pranks, why not us? So Sarika is right here sitting in front of me. Hari Om, we'll get started with today's session. So Bhagwan, he has taught the concept of avatara in a beautiful manner, in a samachara manner, excellently to us. And he has said, Atmanam Srijamyaham, by my will, Atmanam, I take physical form. And he says Dharmasya, of Dharma. Dharma, including all the aspects of Dharma that we have gone through exhaustively. At the individual level, attaining Purushartha or attaining the ultimate human goal is a Dharma for all of us, for all individuals. And with that, Adhyatma Pragati, which means progress through personal experience, is the meaning or implication of Dharma or Dharmasya at the individual level. At the cosmic level, Dharma Samsthapanarthaya, with the goal of re-establishing Dharma in society, in creation. And Bhagavan says that one who understands this concept of avatara in true light, that person attains liberation. Bhakti or devotion in Bhagavan is enabled through the avatara. And that Bhagavan says in the form of Manmaya Mam, absorbed in me. Mam Upashritaha, taking refuge in me. And both of these together essentially is Sharanagati. Manmaya Mam Upashritaha is nothing but Sharanagati. Now Bhagavan is Nirguna and Nirakara. Nirguna meaning without any gunas, the three gunas, and Nirakara meaning without any specific form in nature. But the avatara is Saguna and Sakara, which means with gunas and having a discernible form, a derivable form. The purpose of the avatara, as we had seen the last time, is to connect, establish a connect for human beings with Bhagavan. And when we say Dashavatara, these are the avatars of Lord Vishnu. Bhagavan Vishnu is the protector of the universe. That is his role in the universe. And to describe Bhagavan, there is this very beautiful shloka. Anta Gadmanabham Suresham, Vishwadharam Gagana Sadrisham, Megavarnam Shubhangam, Lakshmi Kantham Kamala Nayanam Yogi Hridyana Gamyam, Vande Vishnum Bhavabhaya Haram Sarva Lokaikanatham. A beautifully scripted shloka, song, prayer that describes Lord Vishnu. Shantagaram, the one with peaceful and highly appealing form. Bhujagasayana, the one who reclines on the Adishesa serpent, the five-headed serpent. Padmanabham, the one from whom heavenly lotus is emanating from the navel. Sureshnam, the god of all gods. Dharam, the supporter of the Vishwa, the universe. Gagana Sadrisham, the one according to who the entire universe functions, operates. Meghavarnam, the one who is dark in complexion, like the clouds, like dark clouds that we have today also. Shubhangam, the one who is highly auspicious in appearance. Lakshmi Kantam, the one who is the abode of Bhagavan Lakshmi, goddess Lakshmi. Kamala Nayanam, the one who has eyes like lotus petals. Yogi Hridyana Gamyam, the one who is sought after by the penance of all the rishis. Vande Vishnum, I bow to you, O Bhagavan, Lord Vishnu. Bhava Bhaya Haram, the one who is the remover of bondage and fear. Sarva Lokaika Natham, the one who is the Lord of all lokas, of all worlds. Now, such prayers and so many other prayers, okay, they are all made to help us visualize and to help us build the connect with Bhagavan. However, as we saw earlier, as the yugas progress, what happens? The connect reduces. And over a period of time is almost lost. For some people, it is completely lost. And to re-establish this connect, Bhagavan takes avatara and takes a physical form and comes in front of us in our form. And as the yugas progressed, we also saw that the avatara also had to be relatable to the human being. Initially, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, even Narasimha, half man, half lion. But later on, had to be a lot more relatable to the human being. Had to acquire a human form. And ultimately, in Krishna Avatara, not only had to acquire a human form, but also had to behave like a human being. So when Bhagavan Sri Krishna is presented as a nutcut, naughty thief, butter thief, Makhan Chor, there is an immediate connect. You know, in today's yuga, you may not connect to Lord Vishnu lying in a five-headed coiled serpent, but there is an immediate connect when we say Makhan Chor Krishna. So just by coincidence, okay, this bhajan came up this time also. मैं नहीं माखन खायो, मैं नहीं माखन खायो, मैया मोरी, मैं नहीं माखन खायो, मैया मोरी भोर भयो गैयन के पाछे, तूने मधुबन मोहि पठायो, भोर भयो गैयन के पाछे, तूने मधुबन मोहि पठायो, चार प्रहर बंसी भट भट क्यों, चार प्रहर बंसी भट भट क्यों, सांझ परे घर आयो री मैया मोरी, मैं कब माखन खायो. Immediate connect, you know, when this happens. So both Bhagavan Krishna and mother, both Devaki, both of them know that he has stolen the butter. But Bhagavan is, you know, hell-bent on proving her wrong. And actually in this bhajan, when you go further, he actually questions, are you really my mother? You are asking me and suspecting me like this? And then finally she succumbs. She says, no, 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 you didn't steal. And then he has to say, oh, I love you, mother. Maya Mori is a very affectionate, loving expression of how he addresses his mother. So in the verse that I recited, he says, at dawn, you send me, you know, to watch after the cows. And I roam around, you know, you send me to the Madhuban, the forest. The name of the forest is Madhuban. And then I roam around the whole day, the entire day. Char Prahar is the 4 sections of the day. Early morning, mid-morning, afternoon and evening. The entire day I'm out there. How could I have stolen the butter? So when Bhagavan is expressed in this form, it is much better for all of us to connect. And that is why he expresses in this form as the avatara, to build that connect. And when he establishes that connect, what follows is love and respect. And what did we see earlier? Love and respect is nothing but devotion. Love and respect together lead to devotion. The connection brings composure and serenity, calmness. When you relate and when you connect with Bhagwan, with the avatara, there is calmness. You feel a lot calmer. We talked about it in the last satsang also. And the love and respect begets devotion. The avatara duty is to build this devotion in Bhagwan. As we saw, Manmaya Mam, absorbed in me. Mam Upashritaha, taking refuge in me. That is how Bhagwan builds the devotion. And Jnana Tapasa, by the knowledge that comes from austerity, from tapas. Tapas is voluntarily carried out. It's an ascetic practice that is carried out voluntarily to achieve perfection, purification. That tapas, that jnana that comes from that tapas. And what jnana? In this context, the jnana of comprehending the nature of avatara. And Bhagavan says that once you have fully comprehended my nature as the avatara, then you have achieved liberation. Just to recap what I had said last time, if we find, because the question has come up so many times in our satsang, if we find it hard to find a guru, Arjuna is very lucky, he got Krishna. I have tried so hard to find a guru. In today's modern Kali Yuga, I am not even finding a guru who I can, look up to. If that is the situation, if we are not that lucky, just remember, this is the solution. What is the solution? Manmaya Mam Upashritaha. Completely absorbed in Bhagwan, taking refuge in Bhagwan, then Bhagwan himself, like he did for Arjuna, he will present himself as your Guru. And Bhagwan says, Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. I am born whenever required. Yuge Yuge. Whenever required. Yuge Yuge means at all times, whenever required. Yuge Yuge also means whenever not required. Bhagavan says whenever required, when dharma is going away or completely lost, when adharma is abounding, prevalent, then I come. That is the time it is required. But he also comes when it is not required, at any time. At any time he comes. If we close our eyes, we sang Shantakaram, we sang Maya Mori, Bhagavan is there in our hearts. So it doesn't have to be that, the world is on the verge of perishment because of adharma abounding and dharma not being there, and that is the required stage when only then will he come. He comes at any point in time. We close our eyes and think of Krishna and lo and behold, he is there with us. So Yuge Yuge, one beautiful thing about Sanskrit is that the akara is hidden in between letters. For example, when you say Balesmin, Bale plus Asmin is Balesmin. Similarly, Yuge Yuge is also Yuge Ayuge. Yuge is at all times, Ayuge is at any time, at no time. So at any point in time, whenever not required also, Bhagavan makes his presence. For us human beings, it is not always possible, especially when we are sadhakas, when we are still in the path of learning, it is not always possible to be nishkama and connect to God. Completely desireless, free of desire. Bhagavan says, Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna. Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna, Nirdvandho Nitya Sattvasto Niryoga Kshema Matmavan. Chapter 2, verse 45. That is not possible. Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna, that kind of a bhava, where you have Bhagavan himself says, I am, without gunas. Nirguna. For us to be Nirguna is very, very difficult. For us to be Nishkama is very, very difficult. We normally reach out to God for our kamas, for our desires. When we want something is when we reach out to Bhagavan, where we think about him for the fulfillment of our desires. My daughter once said, oh God, please make Bombay the capital of India. And when asked, hey, why do you want that? Why are you asking for a change in capital? She says, I wrote that in my exam, that Bombay is the capital of India. So Bhagavan, please change the capital itself, because I wrote that. As the avatara, Bhagavan's presence is felt with you. for you. And through this, he sets the altar for emulation. Like Sri Rama, what is the ideal way to live? Sets the altar for people to follow. The Sakama connect, the connect with Bhagwan through desires, that slowly builds devotion and brings that maturity in the mind. And Sakama then turns to Nishkama over a period of time. And that then leads to liberation. And liberation from what? Liberation from various limitations that we face in life. And we on a day-to-day basis, we face lots of limitations. At a physical level, man and woman. At a physical level, tall and short. At an intellectual level, opinions, judgment, beliefs. At a mental level, joy, sorrow, happy, sad. And from these limitations that we create for ourselves, these limitations that we build for ourselves. And one such limitation is covered in the next verse also. So we'll go to verse 13 of the 4th chapter.
Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam.
Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam.
Gunakarma vibhagashaha.
Gunakarma vibhagashaha.
Tasya kartaramapi mam.
Tasya kartaramapi mam.
Vidya kartaramavyayam.
Vidya kartaramavyayam.
Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam. Gunakarma vibhagashaha. Tasya kartaramapi mam. Vidya kartaramavyayam.
So Bhagavan says that the fourfold textures, colors that make up the mind-intellect framework of people, the castes, has been created by me according to the differentiation of guna and karma. Though I am the author of this, know me as a non-doer and as immutable. One of the most controversial verses of the Bhagavad Gita. The gist or the substance of this verse is for Bhagavan to convey that he is a non-doer and changeless, even though he has created the various textures of personalities. Through what? Through nature. And these textures or these natures determine the action that the human being takes in terms of performance of duties. This is actually the foundation for Bhagavan to bring about the aspects of action and inaction, which we will come to later for our understanding. However, what has happened over a period of time, this verse has been completely misunderstood by the common people. By normal human beings, it has been misunderstood, and it has been highly misused by the upholders of social crime, if I may use that word. People who uphold social crime and because of social crime get selfish gain, those people have misused this verse, leading to the formation of what we know as a caste system today. One of the greatest tragedies of Indian ethos, this Swami Chinmayanandaji says, he says one of the greatest tragedies of Indian ethos is that we have forgotten Sanskrit. We have understood, or whatever we have learned about our scriptures, we have learned through the English language. Even now, what I study and in fact, Swami Chinmayanandaji is one of the primary first people who brought scriptures to us in an understandable format in English language that is used by most of us in modern India. So we have understood this through English language because of lack of prevalence of Sanskrit. We have never learned it. We have never learned it in school. And English got this from German because Sanskrit was first translated into German and then to French, English, and so on and so forth. So all of this, look at the amount. There is this game that we play, right? That you utter a phrase to a first person there are about 10 people sitting in a circle. By the time the phrase comes to the originator, it's completely garbled. So a lot of this has gone from language to language, people to people. And in that has got garbled to a large extent. Nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita you will find, okay, or no, even in most other scriptures, you will not find what, we can say something like there is a caste system or class and so on and so forth. Any division of society, you will not find that in the Bhagavad Gita. Based on what? Based on aspects like birth, based on aspects like race, color, creed, nationality, geography, from where you come from, all of those kind of things. We only find reference to guna and karma. Guna is the nature, karma is the action, and the duties that are defined according to one's nature. Now, natural inclinations of people, that comes from Prakriti. We have seen this earlier also, so I will not go deep into it. And it is in 3 forms, which is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. The Sattva nature, that is oriented towards curiosity, towards analysis, towards learning, towards teaching. And the foundation of this nature and the foundation of all natures, the correct foundation is righteousness, dharma. The Rajasic nature is oriented towards action, towards generosity, towards leadership, social welfare. Remember, Bhagavan talked about Loka Sangraha. So the Rajasic nature is very Loka Sangraha in nature. Again, based on righteousness, dharma. The Tamasic nature is oriented towards service, towards followership, commerce, work, hard labor. Yet again, based on righteousness, on dharma. All 3 are, the foundation is based on dharma, dharmic principles. Bhagavan says, later on in chapter 18, verse 40, he will say, there is no creature of any kind whatsoever in any of the lokas that is free from these 3 gunas, which are born of Prakriti. So all nature, all forms of these gunas, all forms of these Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic aspects are there in every creature of creation. In every human being, all 3 are present. And the duties of people, the karma that they do, are in accordance to their nature. Obviously, there will be one nature which is dominant and others which are subservient. But all nature is there in all people. The karma or duties prescribed were Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. Very similar to how we prescribe duties today. Based upon what do we do? Educational qualifications, aptitude, attitude test. Any organization you want to join, whether it is IAS or a IT job in Bangalore or anywhere else, you will go through. People will see your degree qualifications, aptitude test, attitude test, so on and so forth. And then we classify engineers, doctors, finance, human resources, vice president, director, manager, assistant. All of this is done. Similarly, people who had a dominant sattvic nature with rajas along with that, their duties were prescribed to be brahmanas. Mainly teachers, priests, advisors, and so on. Like advisors to kings, for example. Those with dominant rajas nature and some sattva, they were kshatriyas, leaders, ministers, kings, emperors, governors. Those were the kshatriyas. People who had a dominant rajas nature and some amount of tamas were vaishyas, or traders, farmers, shop owners. And those with dominant tamas nature and some amount of rajas were shudras. followers, workers, assistants, which is exactly what we see in today's world also. However, over a period of time, the corruption and decay crept in. And finally, it swallowed the system. And how did that happen? Birth, skin color, nationality, all these aspects began to determine the action or the duty that the person would perform. Like Bhagavan says, Sa kalena mahata yogo nashta parantapa. Over the years, over the yugas, over the kala, the time, long time, these practices decayed. What happens is position, when it comes from, race, color, caste, creed, that position leads to specific private knowledge that may not be common knowledge. And that knowledge leads to pride, or the access to information that others do not have. That leads to pride. Pride leads to arrogance. Arrogance leads to insecurity. Insecurity leads to protecting your own position. And when that happens, the original way, that gets lost, leading to a corrupt society. So what we see today abound is the corrupt society, not the original society that was defined through dharmic principles. And today's change warriors, when you fight a caste system, quote unquote, the change warriors must be extremely careful, because replacing one arrogance-filled system with another system which is again filled with arrogance of a different kind, that would lead to one more disaster. One disaster after the other. So change, when it's brought about, must be aligned to dharma. And when it is aligned to dharma, then it will be aligned to this system that has been beautifully defined by Bhagavan. When we need it, we do it very well, by the way. In some of the professionally run organizations, what I described in terms of classifying people in terms of their capabilities, so that all of us synergize to lead to the welfare of the organization, is done extremely well. But in some cases, it is done extremely badly, especially where there is more power, where there is more money, where there is more selfish gain. Then all of this goes for a toss. A vibrant society needs all kinds of people. Like any successful organization needs all kinds of employees. Even in my organization, when we recruit people, we actually need all kinds of people to make the organization successful. Similarly, a vibrant society needs all kinds of people. And that is why Bhagavan has made people with different natures. And it's a random, like when you go to a casino and bet, there is a random program. You never know who is going to win. Similarly, the allocation of nature is done in a very random way. Of course, a lot of it based on, we'll come to it later, karma. And in which case, it is only the individual who determines the nature that the individual possesses. So randomness plus the individualness, those are the two. There's no other third reason from where the nature comes. And a society where every person's action, because every person is needed, any action that is performed to perfection is celebrated as worthy of glory. That is the ideal society. And how we co-join, how we conjoin, and how we collaborate between guna and karma, that is critical for the success of any society. If this is not followed, it will end up in a corrupt society. Like we see today, leaders who are not befitting their role. There are numbers of leaders who should not be leaders, numbers of politicians who should not be where they are, ministers who should not be where they are. A number of the spiritual gurus who actually, if you see their lives, have set a very bad example. Some of them have even gone to jail. You don't want to name a number of these people, but I will name, sometimes you feel Rahul Gandhi is so innocent, but he is so inappropriately placed in what he is doing. Complete misfit. but thrust by this corrupt system into a role where the entire world can see that he is a misfit. And I'm sure he knows it, but I don't know if he can do anything about it. So let's come back to the main purport of this verse. The main purport, when Bhagavan says, I have created this, but please note that I am actionless and I am changeless. Akarta, abhokta, avyakta. And this is explained much more detail later. Even the caste, quote unquote, aspects, the varnas, I will not call it caste because it doesn't appear as caste anywhere. The varnas, the textures, the colors of personalities, that will come in chapter 18, and the actionless, changeless aspect of Bhagavan will come in chapter 9. We will deal with it in much more in detail. But what is the benefit for us that Bhagavan is talking about it now? That he's making this statement, I am actionless, I am changeless. What is this benefit? I am akarta and I am, avyakta. He says akartam avyayam. We will see that in the subsequent verses. We'll go to verse 14.
Namam karmani limpanti.
Namam
karmani limpanti. Name karma palispraha. Name karma palispraha. Iti mam yo vijanati.
Iti mam yo vijanati.
Karma virna sabadhyate.
Karma virna sabadhyate.
Namam karmani limpanti. Name karma palispraha. Iti mam yo vijanati. Karma virna sabadhyate.
So karmani na limpanti mam. Actions do not stain me. Karmani, actions, na limpanti. Limpanti means do not touch, do not besmear. Mam, me. And how is that? Na spriha karma phale me. No desire for fruits from actions in me. There is no desire. Na spriha, spriha means desire. There is no desire for karma phala, fruits from actions in me. And Bhagavan says, iti yaha abhijanati mam. Iti, thus, yaha, whoever it may be. Thus, whoever, any caste, any creed, any race, any religion, anyone, whoever knows me fully, abhijanati mam, knows me fully, completely. Abhijanati, abhi means fully, completely. Janati, knows me, mam. Whoever knows me fully, sana bhatyate karma bihi. This person is not bhatyate, bound by what? Bound by actions. And Bhagavan says, thus Arjuna, knowing me in this form, knowing me in this nature, perform your actions. And he says there is a lot of precedence. He says, he quotes the precedence with a certain objective. We will see that soon. That is in the next verse.
Evam nyatva kritam karma.
Evam nyatva kritam karma.
Purvairapi mumukshubhihi.
Purvairapi mumukshibhihi.
Kuru karmaiva tasmatvam.
Kuru karmaiva tasmatvam.
Purvai purvataram kritam.
Purvai purvataram kritam.
Evam nyatva kritam karma. Purvairapi mumukshubhihi. Kuru karmaiva tasmatvam. Purvai purvataram kritam.
Evam nyatva. In this way, knowing me, that I am like this, to be like this. To be like what? Akritva abhoktva. Akritva, actionless, abhoktva. Enjoy. There is no doership, there is no enjoyership. Mumukshubhihi. Mumukshubhihi are the people, the mumukshus, the seekers, whose only desire, sole desire, is liberation. We talked about this earlier also. The mumukshutvas, the people who desire only for liberation. There is no other desire. Those people, api kritam karma, they also performed actions. Purvahi, from the days of yore. And he says, therefore, tasmat, ivatvam, even you, Arjuna, kuru karma, perform actions. Purvahi, in the way that these mumukshus have been doing. Kritam purvatvam, they have done in the way that they have done at all times, in the ancient times. Even during the times of the earlier Manus, the Manvantaras. Not just in this yuga or in the yuga preceding this yuga, in this current Manvantara. Even during the earlier Manvantaras, this is how people have done. So, then the question will come that if Karma Yoga is to be performed, what is Karma Yoga? Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, Karma with Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, Prasada Buddhi. Do everything dedicating, devoting to the Lord, receive all the benefits or whatever comes as a prasada with equanimity. But if this kind of a yoga without desire, without selfishness has to be done, I'll just do it because Bhagwan, you are saying so. Why do you have to tell me that, these ancient seekers in different manvantras have been doing it? What is the reason that you have to say that? In fact, my mother also says, just do it because elders have said so. Perival Chollirka, in Tamil. Elders have said. So because elders have said, do it. Our Guruji says, do it. Blindly follow because this is how it has been told to be followed. Bhagwan addresses this point in the next two verses. We'll recite the next two verses together.
Kim karma kim akarmeti.
Kim karma kim akarmeti.
Kavayopyatra mohitaha.
Kavayopyatra mohitaha.
Tatte karma pravakshami.
Tatte karma pravakshami.
Yajñātvā mokṣyase shubhāt.
Yajñātvā mokṣyase shubhāt.
Karmano hyapi bodhavyam.
Karmano hyapi bodhavyam.
Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha.
Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha.
Akarmanascha bodhavyam.
Akarmanascha bodhavyam.
Gahana karmano gatihi.
Gahana karmano gatihi.
Kim karma kim akarmeti. Kavayopyatra mohitaha. Tatte karma pravakshami. Yajñātvā mokṣyase shubhāt. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Akarmanascha bodhavyam. Gahana karmano gatihi.
Kim karma, kim akarma. What is action? What is inaction? Kavayaha api mohitaha atra. Wise people are also deluded to this. Kavayaha, wise people, the wise, api also, mohitaha, deluded, atra to this. So I told you to do it. I told you because they did it, the way they did it, please follow. Follow because they did it and do it the way they did it. And now I'm myself telling you that they themselves, the wise are deluded in this matter. Kavayaha, the wise. Kavayaha is Medavi, Medaviyaha. Those who have deeper vision. We see poets, but not just any poet. Poets with a deeper vision. Not just any literate. Literates with a deeper vision. Not just any scientist. Scientist with a deeper vision. Not just any leader. Leader with a deeper vision. Not just any other guru. A guru with a deeper vision. Those are the Kavayahas. Everyone sees the sunset and the sunrise in the ocean. But a person with vision will see a mother holding her child in her lap, taking her child in her lap, and a child emerging from a mother's lap, sunset and sunrise. Another person with deeper vision will see celestial bodies that are revolving and rotating in the cosmic creation. These are the Kavayahas, people who have a deeper vision. Kanta Darshini, the one who sees beyond. And Bhagavan says, Api mohitaha atra. They are also deluded. Tat karma pravakshyami te. In that sequence, tat karma pravakshyami te. That action I shall teach to you. Yagyatva mokshashe shubhast. Knowing that action, you shall be liberated from evil. Ashubhat, evil. That jnana, knowing that you will get moksha from Ashubha. And what Ashubha, what is this evil that he is referring to? Whatever that prevents you from doing Karma Yoga. But doesn't action mean doing something and inaction mean not doing anything? Lack of action, absence of action. What is there to learn about it? We all know that, right? We have read it in science also. So Bhagavan says that there is a fact, there is a tattva that makes them what they are. Karma and akarma, action and inaction. What makes action action? What makes inaction inaction? And that fact, bodhavyam, should be known. What should be known? What is karmanaha, action? What is vikarmanaha, forbidden action? And what is akarmanaha, inaction? All these three should be known. Karmanaha here means good action, because vikarmanaha is being specified for forbidden action or bad action. Any bad action is forbidden. And these three should be known. And why should they be known? Because gahanaha, gatihi, karmano. Gahanaha, deep. It is imponderable. It is so deep that it is imponderable. And what is the imponderable? Gatihi, the path, the way of karmano, action. The way of action is deep and imponderable. And Bhagavan says, this deepness, Arjuna, this deepness, and through Arjuna to all of us, this deepness, what cannot be pondered, I shall be teaching you. Pravakshami. I shall be teaching. Pravakshami is not in this verse. He had said that earlier. I'll be teaching you. We will see what he is going to teach in the next satsang. Thank you, Hari Om. I will now pause for invocation closing prayers.
Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Namaha. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you. Any thoughts, questions?
No questions, Ashok. It was good.
Thank you, OP sir.
So it's not a question really, but like you said that in the beginning, Yuge Yuge and Ayuge, I just like to express that God is supposed to be like we are taught from when we were kids, you know, like you said, elders tell you and you just follow. We were told that you need to be humble all the time because God can be there in front of you in any form. So we need to be that, maintain that humility, and we should be, you know, good people because Bhagwan kisi bhi roop mein aapke samne aa sakte hain. And another thing was that they used to say that always wish for something, always good things, because you never know when God is going to listen to you. So yes, it's kind of just an expression that God is there all the time around you. You never know in which form, when. That's it.
As long as you are not at your best behavior because you're scared of that God who is around you all the time, then it's okay.
Yes, yes.
There is also
Of course.
the fear of God, you know. Bhagwan dekh lega, dar ke mare behave karo. That's not, he doesn't want that. His purpose as an avatara is to establish love.
I agree. So it should not be out of fear. It should be a natural thing that should be coming on to you.
Sanskrit has always been a problem for everybody, especially those south of India. That is why when we have 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, people south of India converted into what is called as Dravida Veda. What is Dravida Veda? Dravida Veda is supposed to be the 5th Veda. That 5th Veda is called as Divya Prabandham in the southern parts of India. And in these Divya Prabandhams are 4,000 verses. 4,000 verses sung by 12 Alvars. And one of the Alvar was a divine lady called Andal. She, in her poetry, says, blindly follow your parents and parents' parents and parents' parents' parents. In Tamil it is called Endadandai Dandaidan Muttappan Yevadigal Thodangi. That means there is no point in doing research every stage, every time when answers are available to us ready-made. Unfortunately, Sanskrit we don't follow. And any Pandita, when he comes and say recites Bhagavad Gita or Vedas, we say, oh, he's trying to show off. Because we don't know the language, he's trying to show off. It is not that actually. What the fact is, we have not learnt it. So, when a person like Srini Raghavan and all attempts to speak, Sanskrit, it's a divine thing. And same is the case with Dravida Veda also. But all Vedas and all ultimately same.
I think it's a very nice point made. The Divya Pravandham, and it is worth learning and going through the 4,000 verses, I'm sure. And absolutely, we should see. Even we also say in science, there's no point reinventing the wheel. So whatever we do not need to reinvent, there's no point. We can follow what is already prescribed. But we also have to be intelligent enough to classify it as something which is aligned to dharmic principles, number one. And number two, it is actually meant for our spiritual growth. We talked about the spiritual path in detail. As long as it is aligned to that spiritual path, which we have described in detail, I think it is perfect. And I would say Bhagavad Gita is extremely comprehensive, in putting all of this together, and anything that can build over and above the Bhagavad Gita is most welcome.
Hi, Srini. I have a question. Hi. You spoke about Guru with a deeper vision, Kava Hayas, right?
Yes.
And you also gave the example of a sunset. So Kava Hayas, as I understand, is a person with a deeper vision, right?
Yes.
Now, how do you identify them in the modern era? Because you can say a poet has a deep vision, and you can also say that on the other hand, there can be another person who's far-sighted. So how will you kind of identify who has a deeper vision?
So yeah, this is kind of a different way of asking the question, you know, that I'm not finding the guru, right? And I'm not finding the people. So whoever it is with a deeper vision, you can relate to, you can align to, you can follow if required. And yes, how do you identify? One, you listen to the person. Oftentimes, you know, people don't listen, and that clouds the other person's capability or the abilities. That if the person is indeed a human being with deeper vision, a person who can see beyond, then it clouds that. So if we feel that there is a person who is sharing something which is appealing to us in our journey, then the first step is to listen. The second step is to collate what you have listened to what your path is. If the two of them match, then yes, I think there is something that makes sense to each of us as individuals. But ultimately, you know, if we do what Bhagavan says, you know, take refuge in me and get absorbed in me. If we do that, even when somebody is saying something, if there is deeper vision in it, it will be easier to identify, because we have taken that absorption in the higher ideal. And whenever you get absorbed in the higher ideal, the chances of going wrong are almost zero. It's completely minimized. The deeper the absorption in the higher ideal, the more certain that you are not going to make an error. So even when you are trying to assess if a person is one with a deeper vision, first absorb in the higher ideal. First absorb yourself in God. Take refuge in God. And then the answer will come on its own. That is an insurance. That is 100% certain. That's an insurance. It's not 100% certain with whether a human being is a Taveo or not.
I had another one relating to this action, forbidden action and inaction. But since you said you'll cover it in the next, so I'll keep it for the next time. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Bhagavan will talk about it. You can still, nothing stops you from making your comment. But
yeah, so how do we know what is action, what is forbidden action, what is inaction? It's a matter of perspective. Each one can define it as per his or own convenience. So yeah, action for me can be a forbidden action for you. Forbidden action for you can be an inaction for somebody else. So how do you what do you have to say about that?
So in this context, and Bhagavan will cover this in detail, that is exactly the reason Bhagavan talks about performing action without selfishness, right? When you are performing something without the desire for the bhoga, abhoktatva, without the desire for the bhoga, then you will not think whether it is right for me and wrong for you. Then there will be a common parameter that gets established. The minute you go into your selfish aspect of perception, then yes, what may be right for you may not be right for somebody else. And that is why I had mentioned last time also, when you make a very thought out, conscious, honest commitment about being unselfish, and then you make an assessment of what your position is, then the chances are you will get it right. But even if there is an iota of selfishness in it, then yes, it can be a debate forever. You know, this is my view versus your view.
Thank you.
Any other thought?
I thought I'll just add to what you said about what is action that is allowed and what is the forbidden action. Whatever action is as per dharma is okay. What is against dharma is forbidden.
Dharmic is forbidden, yeah. Actually, we'll come to that in the next satsang and beyond. Yeah. But that's true. That's very right. I was expecting comments on the first verse we did today. But that's fine. Either there is complete disagreement or complete agreement. So that's why there are absolutely no questions on that, which both of which are fine.
I have another thought, Srini. That was regarding the sattva, rajasic, and tamasic. And in the verse, it was also, as you had just mentioned, God said that He's created these three varnas, what do you call it? Sattva, rajasic, and tamasic. So what I always believed is that God created all human beings equal. So why this distinction? Why?
Why do you say God created all human beings equal? If God created all human beings equal, why are there handicapped people? Why is the child born with handicap?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I hope you get the underlying sentiment.
Sorry, finish, please.
Yeah, it's okay. Please carry on.
So God created all human beings equal in the sense that He has given equal capacity to all human beings to pursue this path of Karma Yoga, whatever may be their other limitations. We talked about three limitations, right? The physical limitations, the intellectual limitations, the mental limitations. It comes from the body, mind, and the intellect. Any limitation that is in the paradigm of the body, mind, and intellect, irrespective of that, Bhagavan created everyone equal with the capacity to follow the teaching that he is talking about. His teaching. When he says that follow my teaching, when he says fully become absorbed in me, when he says take refuge in me, those aspects, when you devote yourself to a higher ideal, given where you are, I cannot be Roger Federer. So for me, winning the Wimbledon cannot be higher ideal. So given where I am, devoting myself to the higher ideal, that capacity is equal for everyone. That is what we mean when we say he has made people, human beings equal. All beings equal actually, not just human beings. All beings, all creation is equal. But within the limitations of the body, mind, intellect paradigm, there are differences. And that comes from the karma and from the individual perspective, which again is karma.
How do you define your devotion to the higher ideal? What is that for you? Because it can be different for different people. For me, devoting myself to the higher ideal would mean that whatever duties I have in my normal day-to-day life, I should do it with all sincerity. So that is like my devotion to the higher ideal. So how do you kind of define it?
See, the first step of defining devotion is don't see it from your perspective. The minute you say, for me, this is it, then you put yourself before the higher ideal. The minute you say higher ideal before you, then you are devoted. Every time you look at it from this vision of for me, you just said it, for me doing my duty. So everything is me, aham mama. Arjuna also said, for me, my, Bhishma, how can I fire an arrow at him? My Bhishma, I cannot fire arrow. Then there is no higher ideal. Then it is from your perspective. Absolutely zero thought of for me or my view. Then it becomes devotion.
So how do you define it for a common man? How is a common man supposed to think about the higher ideal? That was my question.
Whatever the higher ideal, I don't know. I mean, if I were to say you're a mother, this is entirely conjecture, I may be completely wrong. Then you don't think about you as the mother, you think about mother. And as a mother, what are the dharmic work that the mother has to do? If you are doing that, then yes, you are committed to the higher ideal.
Thank you.
So in my favorite example, you know, of Roger Federer, if he thinks about his shot, I hit a good shot, hey, I'm so good. I hit a lousy shot, my God, the day is not going well. Both are going to work as a detriment to his own aim, his own path that he is pursuing. But if he thinks about the tournament, then the shot that he hit, the shot that I hit, good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. That is irrelevant. So the only way for devotion is where there is 0 of me and 100 of the higher ideal. Whatever it may be, you know, it could be anything. Your higher, you have to know what your higher ideal is. That is your God. God says that if you know your higher sense of purpose, if you know your higher ideal, I am in that. Like we talked about yesterday, you know, in the last satsang, where there was this question of which God to follow. Bhagavan doesn't give any dictation on which God to follow. He says, you follow whoever you want to. I'm in that. You follow any ideal, I'm in that. That's what Bhagavan says.
Perfect. I have one thing, Srini. Talking about Roger Federer, the baseline backhand, if I must mention, he should just follow on or focus on the baseline backhand that he hits very well, in addition to your example. So I have a question in relation to OP sir's comment as well about dharma and adharma. So again, I'll just give some background on where I'm reaching to. So there's a famous, two-liner in Hindi that एक तरफ मजार पर चढ़ी चादरें बेशुमार और दूसरी तरफ फकीर ठंड से मर गया. So the point that I am trying to make is that dharma can also be relative. What is the correct definition of dharma? My dad and mom as a child used to tell me that nar mein hi narayan seva. Agar nar mein hi narayan seva hai, then why is there so much poverty and why are the trusts like Tirupati and Shirdi, the Sai Baba trust so rich? The poverty should be alleviated. So what is the exact definition of dharma then?
So that is why, in fact, we talked about, that's a very, very, very good question. Thank you, Kushagra. Excellent point that you have made and a question that you have raised. We talked about dharma at 2 levels, the individual level and the cosmic level. You know, Bhagavan actually touches upon it. At the individual level, it is the Purushartha. Whatever my goals are, the Artha Purushartha, Kama Purushartha, Dharma Purushartha, Moksha Purushartha. We have gone through that, right? So those individual goals, and through those individual goals, the growth that I am experiencing when I am pursuing those goals. So whatever they may be is at that level, right? And the dharmic aspect from a cosmic perspective is dharma samsthapanarthaya, in the society. So if in the pursuit of my individual goal, I am causing harm to any of the other creation, we talked about, you know, the yajna spirit. Yeah. Bhagavan defines yajna, you know, as the spirit of cooperative endeavor, sacrifice. When you make a sacrifice first for the other elements of creation, and then because of that sacrifice, you get the gain back from the elements of creation. That Bhagavan talked about, right? That is at the cosmic level. So one cosmic level is Bhagavan's cosmic level, where he talks about dharma samsthapanarthaya, and then the individual dharmic level. The two get connected by the yajna spirit. The way for us at our levels to connect is by the spirit of sacrifice or the spirit of yajna. Deva yajna, Pitru yajna, Bhuta yajna, Rishi yajna. You know, we talked about all of that, right?
Yeah.
So if we are doing our day-to-day work, if we are pursuing our Purushartha, which is the individual goal, with the spirit of yajna, that I will first sacrifice for the higher ideal. I will first sacrifice for the higher. If the child is the higher, fine. Krishna's mother, she gives up. You know, main nahi makhan khayo. Finally, she says, yes, you didn't eat. For her, that was the higher ideal. And then, you know, in fact, in the bhajan that I sang, there is a beautiful, initially, you know, it says, main nahi makhan khayo. Then he says, main nehi makhan khayo. I only had the So after the mother gives in, then Bhagavan says, no, you are right. I was playing with you all the while.
I get that, but again, a small rebuttal here. In the realm of Kali Yuga, that maybe this song, this Bollywood song better describes. There was a beautiful song that Shisha ho ya dil ho toot jata hai, और एक को मनाओ तो दूजा रूठ जाता है. So it's all a duality. It's a sense of duality. You just take an example, might be a controversial one, but the foundation stone laying, which happened in Ayodhya a few a month ago or so. So you say again, on one end the folks are trying to restore dharma, but on the other end it is offending the interests of the others. So this is what I am telling, that it's all, everything is has a dual path. So what is the correct one from the cosmic level, I do understand, but it does take time for a common man to get to that level. So on an individual level, what should be the way that what I feel is right, or what should be right as per what I'm hearing that it is good for the society?
See, that's why Bhagavan says that over the yuga, dharma itself, decays over the yugas. That's what Bhagavan says, right? Yeah. So the concept of dharma, the way you define dharma, what dharma is, that itself decays. And when that decays to a limit where there is no further go for humanity, for creation, then he himself makes that appearance as an avatar. So some of these aspects, they are beyond debate and discussion because it's in the realm of decayed dharma. Yeah. What's the point in going and talking about decayed dharma? Don't know which is right, which is wrong, and there will be a number of people arguing from their own individual perspective of what decayed dharma over the yuga. We are in Kali Yuga. Bhagavan says that the dharma itself, the pedestal of dharma itself comes down, and once finally the pralaya happens, you will go back to Satya Yuga, where it is at its highest pedestal. So some of the topics like you touched upon, they are already at a very low dharmic pedestal.
Just one example, I'll take 30 more seconds. So why I'm asking is, I was speaking to this relative of mine, happens to be a mother's brother. So this uncle, he runs an orphanage, okay? And there are, whenever a death happens in the orphanage, this guy has taken up the bida, you can say in Hindi they say bida, or the weight, that all the last rites from the funeral to the wood will be his sponsorship. So he does that out of his service to humankind, but his family is unhappy. That's why you're spending so much money there. So now on one end it's dharma, but on the other end you are offending your best people, the people that you're living with. So this is like, all these are culminating into the question that I'm asking, but I do understand what you're telling, that it's getting decayed. So you just need to follow your own path, like the jockey, the horse.
See, when you are following dharma, then it will not lead to sin. Now, let's not forget what sin is. Bhagavan defines sin as the disturbance that is there within your self. That disturbance is sin. So if this activity is causing disturbance in the spiritual well-being, in the mental well-being, in the intellectual well-being of the individual and the surrounding individuals, then it is not aligned to them. If it was indeed dharmic, then it will not cause any disturbance.
But there is a word called Vimud Buddhi. You're right. The Vimudas.
Delusion. Yeah. That is delusion. Yeah. So truly following dharma will actually reduce and eliminate disturbance. But if something is actually increasing disturbance, then obviously you have to figure out where the dharma is being flouted. That's also another way to address Aditi's question. If you are thinking that I am doing my duty, I am doing what I think is right, but it is actually in the environment, it is causing a disturbance, then you need to think about what you are doing. Is it aligned to dharma or not? If it is increasing the peace and well-being of everyone, then absolutely, yes, it is dharmic.
Thank you.
Srini, so the question is, how do we connect the qualities of dharma, this to body, mind, and intellect? So the rajogunam, the tamogunam, etc. How do we connect that to body, mind, intellect? And the following question is, so if we look at our ultimate guru, Swami Chinmayananda Saraswati, are we saying that such people have both sadguna and rajoguna, both sattvic and rajasic?
Sure. So yes, and that's why I kind of talked about the permutations, combinations. So Bhagavan says that every creature in creation has all the gunas that come from nature. And what are the gunas that come from nature? Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. All three of them. Of course, the permutation combination, you may have 60% Sattva, 40% Rajas. 60% Sattva, 50% Rajas, 10% Tamas. All that is, for individuals to figure out. No one can say that you have this and I have this, right? If I figure it out, that's good enough. And also Bhagavan says that in the olden days, see, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra definition is very pertinent to the olden days. Today, we need to work out what is pertinent for us. And human society has done that. In various and almost everywhere, we have worked out very logical, scientific ways of distribution of aptitude and mapping them with the action required. So coming to your first question, how do you map the body, mind, intellect to the gunas? Mm-hmm. The body, mind, intellect to the gunas is essentially the distribution of the permutation, combination, or the nature qualities in the individual. And how that distribution is then affecting that individual's behavior. Typically, most inquisitive people will be, quote unquote, sattvic, right? Because they are more curious about what's going on. And those inquisitive people will be what? They'll be scientists, engineers, explorers, okay? Those kind of people. People who are more rajasic, action oriented, and at the same time have that quality of giving. They'll be ideal as leaders. But a person who is in a wrong profession, but the guna is obviously different, that also starkly stands out, like the example that I gave you of Rahul Gandhi, right? It starkly comes out that his nature is very different from the role that he is doing. So when you see the qualities of nature in a person, and that you see in the way they use their body, mind, intellect to depict it, to do their work, to do their action, to do their duty. Over a period of time, it becomes pretty obvious.
Right. And can it change also in a person? So what I'm trying to see is...
Of course it can.
Yeah. For example, in the earlier days, we say that, it is a caste system based on what you are doing, right? That is how, the Vaishya, Shudra, Kshatriya, all of that came in, right? Brahmanas. But now the way, for example, the way you are saying, when somebody has to get into IAS or somebody has to work in the IT industry, we are looking at their intellectual capacity and the attitude and aptitude and everything. It is not about caste or anything, right? It is more about their intellect, if I may say so, right? So I think that has changed over a period of time as a society, but similar to that, in a person also, it can change over a period of time, right? Maybe when I was in my youth, I could be more like a sattvic, and then it could be rajasic. That also can happen, right?
Absolutely, yes. So I'll just first address the first point you made. It was actually wrong, Anupama. Earlier, you made a statement that earlier the caste determined the duty. No, that's exactly what Bhagavan is saying. That happened later on because of corruption. Today, Rahul Gandhi is president of Congress, or was president or one of the leaders of Congress because of that corruption. Or Lalu Prasad Yadav, or let's not get into individual examples. So a lot of that misfits that we see in today's society is because of that corruption. If a CEO of a company wants his son to be CEO, then there is a problem. That comes from that corruption, right? So as per the original definition, the nature is supposed to determine the action or the duty, not the other way around. The nature of the person is supposed to determine. But in the yugas, the corruption made it the other way around. It got twisted. So even in those days, it was the nature that determined the duties. Exactly like we do an aptitude test and determine whether a person is fit for a leadership role or a manager role or a worker role in an organization. Exactly in the same way, in the olden days also, the nature of the person determined the profession that or the duty or the action that the person performed. That is how it used to be. And to your second point, and that is how it should be through generations and through yugas. When it gets corrupted is where the problem comes in. So Bhagavan says that identify the nature, and I've defined to you how to identify the nature. I've listed out the natural aspects, the sattva, rajas and tamas. And even in today's world, if we use the sattva, rajas and tamas, we can do excellent definition, even modern roles, by the way, okay?
Right.
Whether it is leadership roles or whether it is functional roles. So it holds true for any generation, any yuga. So that way, if we do, it will be perfect. Now, coming to your second point, yes, absolutely. So when you are a young person with a family, with responsibilities, let's talk about today's world. You earn money. Why do you earn money? To support yourself and to support your family. Okay. And as you go older and older and older, you say that, yes, I'm earning money today, but I'm using that money for society welfare, for charity. So at that time, it was Rajasic. The second, at a later stage, it is Sattvic. But if you use that money for gambling, then it is probably classified as Tamasic. So the same person going and working and earning money in the initial stages, Rajasic. And then later on, if I use that money to gamble, Tamasic. If I use that money for Lokasangraha, then Sattvic. So yes, it can change for it. It should change actually for an individual over the lifetime.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking that, in which case the Bhagavan has given us an excellent psychometric analysis through this also, right? The way
absolutely. Right. Fantastic psychometric analysis. Yeah. And by the way, using your money to go gamble, it's not wrong. We are nobody to judge. Bhagavan says nothing is wrong. Any behavior, any activity, any action that you do using nature and you do it excellently, glorify that, is what Bhagavan says. The only thing that probably should not be glorified is complete inaction, tamas. We'll come to that later, okay? Or vikarma, wrong action. Vikarma, and by the way, getting confused between acts. So what Bhagavan will talk about is, you see, so a very simple example. We sit in the earth and we see that the sun is going around the earth. But the truth, the tattva, is this earth is actually going around the sun. So what you see is not what is. The person who has deeper vision is the one who sees what is, the tattva. That is what Bhagavan will say. I actually jumped the gun, but that is what Bhagavan will say. Bhagavan will talk about the person who knows the truth is the person who sees what actually is.
Sure. Thank you, Srini.
One thing again, or talking on the similar lines. So when we say that if we do our discharge of our duties, then we are following our dharma. So then what, according to you, what is your perspective on the dharma of a person who's a kasai, who butchers animals, or who's a Jallad, a person who just gives the death sentence, pulls the trigger for someone who has been given the death sentence. So what is the exact dharma of those people? Because ultimately it's a big sin. According to a normal human, it's a sin what they're doing. But again, that is their dharma.
The person who pulls the lever that hangs a criminal, or a person who presses the trigger to annihilate whoever the criminal is, or a soldier. See, please understand. So it's easier. It's a lesser of a problem for what is the word, Jallad? Huh? That what? Huh?
Jallad is the one who pulls the lever.
Correct. The Jallad or the Kasai.
Kasab.
It is easier to define there. What about a soldier in the war front, where the other guy in front of him, what is he doing? He's fighting for his motherland. What wrong has he committed? At least the Jallad, is punishing a criminal who has been declared one by a legal system. However good, let's assume that it was a very accurate, good system. So if Bhagwan Rama, pronounced as King Rama, pronounced somebody a criminal and executed him, then the person doing the job is following dharmic principles. It's a lot easier. But what about, Ravana is also known as a person who is dharmic. Okay, yes, he did a dharmic job also. That is why Bhagwan ultimately gave him that punishment. But the soldier fighting for Ravana, the soldier fighting for Ravana, the well-intentioned soldier fighting for Ravana, what do? Do you kill him or don't kill him? So that is a much more difficult question to answer, right?
No, Srini, Panduranga here. There is a difference between Jallad and Kasai. Kasai is guy who works in slaughterhouse. So he's the one who's pulling trigger on his own, this one. Whereas a Jallad is somebody who, based on somebody else's directions, executes an order. So probably, how do you differentiate, extending that question, a Kasai's role in terms of dharma?
Actually, towards the end, you kind of broke up. So I don't think I completely got your question. But let me, maybe I'll give you time to just do a quick check.
How is the butcher performing a dharma?
Correct. So is that your question, Panduranga? How
yeah, that's what my point was. So there is a difference between butcher and Jallad. Okay. Kasai, essentially Kasai is a butcher, and Jallad is a guy who basically who hangs somebody based on a judgment by authorities.
Yeah, so that is difficult, but let's put it this way. So if I am, let's talk about the Kasai, right? A Kasai who is doing his job for a common welfare, for a higher welfare, for somebody else's welfare, but he's doing his job excellently. Then at an individual level, see, one thing none of us have any control over where we are positioned in our life. I am born an Indian to the parents that I have as a Hindu, practicing what I started practicing from my childhood, and so on and so forth, right? Why was I not born in America? Or why was I not born in a Kasai's house? So where we are, we don't have much of an influence over. But what we do where we are, we have full influence over, 100% influence over that. So if we are doing whatever we are doing, given the larger framework, then we are a cog in the wheel. Then the best dharma is to let the wheel spin. But within the cog in the wheel, if there is a spoke that's going the other way around, then if I'm able to correct it, then I'm doing my dharma. If I'm ignoring it, I'm not. So if I'm, as a Kasai, doing something which is for the welfare of the profession that has been defined by society, in the yuga in which I am in, I would venture to say that probably in Satya Yuga, there is no Kasai. The Kasai has come into play in a much more degraded dharmic society itself. Okay. To my conscience, it appears that a Kasai would not have been there in a much more advanced society, which has a higher dharmic level, like a Satyuga. Should not be there, you know, because there is no reason to harm anyone else. What about a doctor who is pulling the plug on a patient?
Euthanasia.
Is he to decide that the patient should die or not? So at that stage, if you are doing your duty for that, whatever the goal or the principle established by, and that is the answer for the Jallad also. If the society and the principle has established the death penalty and you are only executing towards it, you had no influence on, you know, saying whether death penalty should be awarded or not, then you are doing your dharmic duty. There's nothing wrong in what you're doing. If you are a soldier in the war front and the other soldier is a good human being, has been practicing all dharmic principles, looked after his family well, has been a very good son, good father, good husband, good, you know, wife, whatever it may be, but is a soldier there. Your duty demands that you fight that soldier and take his life if required. Then you are doing your dharmic principles. You are following your dharmic duties. For each individual, if we are able to, at my position, see, if we start thinking about judging for others is where the problem comes. If we in our space, in our time, if we are able to define it in alignment with righteousness, then I think it is good enough.
Right now, my mind is going to a deity that, you know, in the Hindu tradition, there's a deity called Chinnamastaka. Okay. Where I have been to a very famous temple by Chinnamastaka. There are two. One is in UP. It's called Mahir. And the other is in Jharkhand. It's called Rajarappa. So, you know, I personally, me as a person who is a vegetarian, I go there and I see that my Kasai reference was that. And this is an answer to Pandurang sir as well. That now that person is employed by the temple trust. That person is being paid a salary, and it's the tradition, the family tradition, as you said. So he is earning money for his family by doing it, but by virtue of he earning money, he is butchering some 100 animals in a day. So this was the exact reference, but definitely the dharma is getting decayed, so that answers it all.
See, the point is, Bhagwan very clearly, I mean, actually the more we simplify it, the better. The more we complicate it, the worse, okay? The answers are very difficult to find the more we complicate it. Bhagavan puts it in a very, very simple framework. He says that, you know, if you have the higher ideal, if you pursue your work in full dedication to the higher ideal, and if you receive whatever comes forth as with equanimity, okay, Ishwararpana Buddhi, Prasada Buddhi, and you do that with full devotion to the higher idea. Full devotion, 100% devotion to the absorbed in me, fully taking refuge in me. When you do that, then Bhagavan says that you will attain liberation. That is the solution he gives. And he also says, because he puts the individual in the perspective of cosmos, he says that the cosmos has been built as a collaborating, self-sustaining ethos. If you are doing anything to disrupt that, if you are doing anything to cause a break in that chain link, then you are being adharmic. Whereas if you are aligning, we went through the cosmos in detail, the cosmic chain in detail. I'm not going to go through that again, right? If you are aligning to it, then we are following the principles of Dharma. And then he also says, how do you align to it? The way to align to it is by the Yajna spirit. Then he also gives how do you align yourself with the cosmic chain. He says two things. One, do your karma. Okay, number one. Number two, he says, do it with a spirit of sacrifice. Yajna spirit. These are the two things he defines. Right? And if you do all of this, you will align with the... Then he also says that irrespective of all of this, over the yugas, there is deterioration. That happens. There's nothing you can do to change it or help it. In spite of you, in spite of whether you follow, in spite of whether you do not follow, whether you are in a Kasai house or whether you are in a temple police place, it doesn't matter. There will be deterioration over the yugas. We are in a lifetime, 100 years. We talked about the yugas, right? How many years? The trillions of years, right? Over those there is deterioration, he says. So he defines all of this in perspective. He puts it very beautifully. In that entire perspective, all we have to focus on is the Ishwararpana Buddhi, the Prasada Buddhi, the Yajna spirit. In our space where we are today, given the fact that we are going through these kind of discussions today, these three are more than enough. Beyond this, it's not productive to our own spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Panduranga.
Thank you.
Yeah, so sorry if I'm pushing this again. I'll go back to the same context comparison of Jallad versus Kasai. You know, when a Jallad does the job, he's essentially executing based on certain processes which have been defined. More so, probably he's hanging somebody who's done a criminal act. Okay. But Kasai is not. You know, he can't walk away saying that this is a job assigned to me and I will kill and I can get away with it. Okay. Because he has an option and there is no social or there is no justified system which says that you can kill an animal and then you can assign it to somebody else and say, okay, you go ahead and kill. Since we ordered you, you have no responsibility towards this action.
Don't know, you know, see, I'm not in that position of the Kasai, so I don't even, that's why I'm saying it is unproductive to the spiritual growth if we don't know what his position is. For example, if the Kasai doesn't kill the animal, maybe the child is dying, no? He needs to kill the animal to get the money to save his ill child or his family or feed his family, whatever it may be. In today's yuga, in the deteriorated yuga, the situation is such that an individual has to do something to protect something else. The yuga demands that we have no help, and that is for that person to figure out. The minute we start debating and discussing, see, it's an intellectual observation, right? Intellectual observation can be right, wrong, don't know. It could be anything. That individual needs to figure out. If there is something which is a bigger dharmic alignment for which he is doing, well and good, it's good for him. If he is doing it not with that, then it is bad. Then it's probably not giving him peace of mind also. Which ultimately is the Parama Purushartha, you know, peace, inner peace, full happiness, deep happiness. That's what Parama Purushartha is. See, all of the spiritual, whatever we are talking, is about how we can attain that Parama Purushartha. We don't need to figure out how XYZ, you know, a Jallad and a Kasai has to obtain Parama Purushartha. If in the next Janma, we are indeed there and there is a next Janma, then we will, and we are a Jallad or a Kasai, that's the time we have to figure out. But Bhagavan defines it beautifully at the individual level, at the society level, at the cosmos level, and at the time level, the infinite time, you know, the Mahakala, the Kalena Mahata, at that time level he defines. So if we as the small speck can slot ourselves properly in this cosmos, that is good enough. We will say Hari Om for today and we'll continue next Saturday. Hari Om. Hari Om.